Before the league was flooded with deep shooting guards chasing the Steph Curry blueprint, there was a short Mormon kid in Utah taking the world by storm. Jimmer Fredette came into college ready to go. He trained relentlessly through high school and had just spent the offseason lighting up a prison league. Yeah, an actual prison league. He was tough and he had something to prove. His freshman and sophomore seasons were all about development. The talent was obvious, but the game needed polishing, and Jimmer put in the work. By the end of his sophomore year, he was dropping over 16 points a night and hitting threes at a near 39% clip. He was quietly becoming one of the NCAA's most dangerous scorers. But it wasn't until his junior year that the legend really took off. He dropped 49 on Arizona, a performance that went viral and caught the attention of the sports media everywhere. Just weeks later, he cooked another team for 45. At that point, Jimmer wasn't just a solid scorer, he was a showstopper. He easily could have gone pro after that season, but he came back for his senior year at BYU, and that's when Jimmer Mania truly exploded like nothing we had ever seen before. In a packed January showdown against the undefeated San Diego State, led by none other than Kawhi Leonard, Jimmer stepped into the spotlight and never looked back. With 22,000 fans in the building, he dropped 43 points, carrying BYU to a 71-58 upset win in a game they had no business being in. It was his third 40-point outing of that season, and the start of a stretch that felt like something out of the corniest sports movie that you've ever seen. Deep threes from 30, 35, even 40 feet, pull-ups in transition, buzzer beaters, every week it was something new. The country was in awe of this 6'2" white kid with unlimited range and unlimited confidence. He wasn't quick, he wasn't a great athlete, but this kid could hit bombs like no one's business. Trey Young would of course go on to draw the most comparisons to Steph Curry in later years, but Jimmer was truly the first one to get that treatment. Steph had just left Davidson 2 years prior, and now fans were wondering, could this Jimmer kid do the same thing? When March rolled around, things got even crazier. Jimmer smashed BYU's single-game scoring record, previously held by Danny Ainge, with a 52-point eruption in the conference tournament. He led BYU all the way to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1981. And if you were watching back then, you know. These games didn't feel like college hoops, they felt like the main event. He wasn't just a student athlete, he was a celebrity. Kevin Durant called him the best scorer in the world. President Obama said he was unbelievable. Thousands lined up just to get in the building or to get an autograph, a picture, or a glimpse of the kid. With the way people swarmed the arenas, you'd think LeBron or MJ was pulling up. Not a babyface guard from upstate New York who looked more like a soccer player than an NBA prospect. But that was the Jimmer effect. And when he was taken 10th overall in 2011, no one batted an eye. Steph had entered the league 2 years before him and was successful in the time that he was on the floor, so why wouldn't Jimmer be? Although there were certainly things on both sides of the ball that Steph did to differentiate himself from Jimmer, he didn't come close to the miracle run that Jimmer put together at the collegiate level. Well, pretty soon those little differences started to add up. Sure, he could shoot at a high level, but he didn't have much of a handle and definitely couldn't play defense for shit. Steph may be known for firing 3 balls at the hash like free throws, but the magic of Steph Curry really takes place before the ball is even in his hands. In terms of navigating through screens and finding pockets of space without a crossover, Steph Curry is literally the best ever. And Jimmer was, well, not even up to NBA standards. He was already small, but played like he was even smaller than he was. He also played like he was the best player on the court as he was in college, but newsflash, in the NBA, he wasn't even close. His rookie season forced him into uncomfortable positions, which not only exposed his shortcomings, but also made the one thing he could do very difficult. He shot 36% from 3 and not even 40% from the field. In his second year, he was able to become more efficient, but his minutes were cut and he morphed into solely a role player. But the role that he was asked to play, he didn't play well. He would get cooked on the defensive end right after being forced to shoot an off-balance 3-ball that came nowhere near to going in. It was disastrous. He averaged more turnovers than assists, barely scratched 3 points per game, and was ranked near the bottom of the league in every defensive metric. Jimmer was the size of a point guard, but couldn't handle the rock. This guy wasn't going to pass the ball no matter what, and couldn't defend a parked car. Jimmer was essentially a one-way point guard whose only real skill was the ability to catch and shoot, while not having a real knack for moving without the ball. Jimmer really was not even close to an NBA player. I know in this day and age especially, 3-point shooters are valued more than ever, and when it came to his jump shot alone, he at the time was Steph's best comparison. But there isn't a player that's this limited in this many areas that's going to find a spot in the league no matter what. His best option was the D-League, the next D-League team to be exact, and to his credits, he played pretty well when he got there. He showed flashes of the old Jimmer again, but NBA execs weren't buying it anymore. Once you've been exposed to that badly at the NBA level, it's hard to get a second or third look. Eventually, Jimmer made peace with reality. He wasn't going to be an NBA player, not long term. And that's when he finally found success. You see, after losing his NBA status, Jimmer went on to play for the Shanghai Sharks in China, and there, he thrived. No longer did he have to worry about his defense being lackluster or his handles being subpar. All he had to do was shoot the shit out of the ball, and he was pretty good at it. Word started to get to the States about the volume and efficiencies that he was shooting at, and people's minds were pretty blown. He played in China for 3 years and averaged 37 points per game every single season. He would play 6 more games in the NBA where he shit his pants and went back to China, and has resorted to playing 3-on-3 ball for Team USA. And so, Jimmer became the first of many failed Steph Currys. It's easy to hyperfixate on Steph's jump shot as the reason for his success, since after all, he's the undisputed greatest of all time in that regard. But with the blinders on, it's easy to overlook the million little things that Steph perfected, all of which Jimmer just seemed to neglect. If you're watching this right now, there's an 85% chance that you're not subscribed to the channel, so make sure to change that for me, and I appreciate all you guys watching. When you're going through the list of players that fit this category, Trey Burke's name sticks out, because back in his college days, this guy was getting Curry comparisons for lighting up the tournaments at Michigan. Sure, he wasn't shooting the ball quite as much as Steph did in his Davidson days, but it looked like he had many of the attributes that a lot of these other guys were missing to make themselves like Steph. He won pretty much every individual award you could at the college level and put Michigan on his back to get them to the national championship. He had Curry-like moments, like in the Sweet 16 when he nailed a contested 30-footer to help put down #1 Kansas. He had that killer warrior-like mentality that most players never have, and held the intangibles that you just can't find on a box score. He drew comparisons to guys like Kemba Walker as well, just because of that explosive scoring punch he brought to the college scene, randomly being able to explode for like 15 points in 6 minutes at any time. And because people thought that he could bring that intensity and excitement to the next level as well. He would be drafted by Minnesota before getting traded to Utah with the 9th pick, ahead of guys like Giannis, CJ McCollum, and that year's Rookie of the Year, Michael Carter-Williams. He was thrown right into the fire as a first-year full-time starter, and was able to have a solid season if you overlook his scoring efficiency or other typical rookie issues. It became worrying, however, after his second season, when his low percentages got even worse. Because he was only 6 feet tall, he really couldn't afford that. He shot the ball on 37, 32, 75 splits, and there was a clear lack of pace and a lack of vision on the floor. He wasn't looking to pass the rock, and he was getting absolutely fried defensively. He turned into the next Jimmer Fredette pretty damn quick. He was so fun to watch in college because he heaved up threes and took advantage of lower levels of competition. Don't even get me started on his defense either, because it was the same exact thing. He couldn't justify his lack of defense with his offense because his offensive game, although a bit better than Jimmer's judging by the eye test, just hadn't clicked whatsoever. Pretty quickly, this guy went from a young guard with a world of offensive talent to a project that could be molded into a 6th-man spark plug at best. The speed of the NBA game was just too much for him. When he went to the G League, he averaged north of 25 points per game, but when he got back up to the league, he went back to not being able to get efficient looks or guard anyone at any position. Over time, his career started forming a loop. He'd stick with the team for a season, if even that, because he kept getting cut, and would shift from the G League and the bench year after year. But he was stuck in an awkward place that he didn't really belong in either. He was too good for the G League, but not good enough to be a significant NBA piece. He had a mini insurrection in the bubble, dropping 31 at one point and as much as 25 in those playoffs, but to be honest, who wasn't having career games in the NBA bubble? But now, he's stuck playing for the Guangdong Tigers and some random team in Mexico, so it didn't turn out that great. The NBA is just flat out brutal to guys like Burke. He was never groomed into a microwave bench scorer, nor was he good enough to lead his own team at the points. His defense sucked. His scoring was easy to stop if you were an NBA team with a number of guys capable of locking up a 6-footer. Trey Burke just kind of makes you appreciate the difficulty that not only Steph but other undersized scoring guards reach to turn into actual offensive weapons in the NBA. Trey Burke is a super skilled basketball player, man. This guy can torch every level of basketball under the NBA. That little hurdle from top guy in the G League to actual NBA role player is quite the jump, man. And Trey Burke just puts that into perspective. While Jimmer and Trey Burke may fit the bill best, Jordan Poole may take the title for the most ironic because he shared the backcourt with Steph himself. Steph helped mentor him, helped shape him into the player he is now, and was integral to getting him his title. But the illusion that Poole could become the next great Warrior splash bro quickly faded away. Poole wasn't drafted to be a cornerstone. He was taken 28th overall by the Warriors in 2019. A streaky scorer out of Michigan, full of confidence or a little stupidity, but light on polish. And his rookie season was brutal. He shot 33% from the field, 27% from 3, and posted a horrific minus 9.6 box plus minus. He looked like a G League player, and for stretches he actually was, but the timing worked in his favor. The Warriors were in the middle of a soft one-season reset. Steph and Clay got injured, the team was tanking for James Wiseman, who kinda sucked, but regardless, Poole got some minutes. He got to make mistakes, and by year 2, things started to click. He averaged 12 points per game on much improved splits of 43% from the field and 35% from deep. He looked more comfortable, less erratic, and even spent some time in the G League bubble developing as a shot creator. The Warriors development staff clearly saw something that the rest of the league had missed, a confident shot maker with legitimate scoring upside. And then came the breakouts. In 2021-2022, with Clay still working his way back, Poole was thrust into a larger role, and he delivered. 18.5 points per game and 4 assists, shooting 36% from 3. He danced into 3 balls, finished creatively around the rim, and pushed the pace on the fast break. He didn't just survive, he thrived in this Warriors system. A third splash bro appeared to be upon us. Poole was playing rather efficiently and well within the flow of the offense, running off arrays of off-ball screens to find open looks for him to fire on, or advantages that he could attack off the dribble. Poole is basically used as another Steph Curry while Steph was on the floor, and with this pick-your-poison style of offense, it soon proved to be impressive even for the Warriors' standards. In the first round against Denver, Poole went nuclear, dude, averaging over 28 points per game across the first 3 games on 66% shooting and 59% from 3. Denver's defense wasn't ready for this dude. He punished switches, roasted drop coverages, and looked like a seasoned veteran in 2-man actions with Draymond. This version of the Warriors looked very different. They weren't the KD-era death machine, but they were close to that 2015-2016 squad in terms of style, only this time with new perimeter weapons. Guys like Poole and Wiggins added shot creation pressure in ways that Harrison Barnes or Sean Livingston never did. In the second round, Memphis was a tougher test. With Ja, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, and Triple J, bringing elite defense and intensity that seemed to have the capabilities to really suppress this Warriors team. But Poole stepped up again, giving the Warriors 18 a game off the bench. His scoring was critical in this series. After cruising past the Mavericks and Luka Doncic in the Western Conference Finals, Golden State faced Boston, where Steph took over, averaging nearly 32 a game, and finally silencing his doubters about this whole franchise. Poole's role shrank a little bit, but he still contributed in a major way. He stayed efficient, hit timely 3 balls, and did his job when he was asked to. He finished the postseason averaging 17 points a game on 51, 39, and 92 shooting splits. That's pretty elite. Golden State won the NBA Finals, Steph got the Finals MVP, but Poole, he was the 3rd best offensive weapon on a championship-winning team, and the Warriors rewarded him like it, handing him a 4-year, $140 million extension. But that changed the math a bit. Poole wasn't the fun young star anymore. He was a core piece, and suddenly expectations skyrocketed. Then came the punch. Draymond completely crashed out and swung at Poole. I mean, that's just kind of regular Draymond shit at this point, but no matter who it is, when something like that happens between teammates, it creates a rift that's nearly impossible to fix. And when you add in the fact that the Warriors have been looking to go for one more championship win in an all-out win-now attitude, it makes sense why the Warriors sent Poole off to DC for Chris Paul in that offseason. But for Poole, it wasn't all that bad. He was going to get to be the star of the new show in DC and show whether or not he was really a star-level player. But there were already signs that he wasn't. The energy that he had was much needed, but a lot of the time it landed on the side of immaturity. It was nice when he had a 30-foot three-pointer, but it wasn't when he was taking ill-advised shots at the wrong time. He became a hooper that looked nice to make TikTok edits about, but not a hooper that you'd actually want taking the last shot if you had another option. With the Wizards, there wasn't any real structure, and no one put him back in his place, which was probably the worst possible situation for Poole, who ended up getting benched. And it comes without saying by now that Poole is probably more of a number 3 option than a number 1. Himself and Kyle Kuzma had the Warriors limping to a 15-67 record, with Poole listing efficiencies as low as his rookie season, and clearly struggling to find a real role on a team like that. As the clear-cut number 1 option this past season, Poole was able to put up numbers a bit higher than usual, and to be fair, Poole still remains quite a talented player. Poole was never quite like Steph. As we see him doing in Washington, Poole is your traditional tank commander who can give you an entertaining 20 points per game, or probably like a spark plug 6th man on a good team. He never quite captured the essence of Steph's game whatsoever, but for a player of such a wildly different skill set to Steph, it was certainly interesting to see the success they had when utilizing Poole in the same way. Nico Mannion is the lesser version of this, because while he was able to get to the league and play alongside Steph, his journey was pretty short-lived. You may remember Mannion for his high school days where this ginger kid was torching everybody, dominating at a Steph Curry camp and becoming the number 1 point guard in his class, before deciding to go play college ball at Arizona. With a 5-star ranking and sliding into the top 10 in his high school class, Nico Mannion wasn't just a fun mixtape maker, this guy was a very legitimate NBA prospect. Could score the ball on all 3 levels and of course shoot the crap out of the ball from deep. It also helped that he had the mentorship of his father, a former NBA player, kind of fitting that Steph Curry mold as well. People had chalked him up as a one-and-done lottery pick, but once he got to Arizona, it was a constant struggle. He shot the ball at pretty terrible rates, and even though he was the main scoring option at the guard position, he often didn't rise to the occasion. His shooting was piss poor for a guy that was thought to be lights out. His playmaking was his one redeeming attribute, but even at times looked a bit inconsistent, and to be honest, nothing really set him apart from a lot of other guards at the college level. But as they seem to do nowadays, highlights inflated his game. Looking back on it, he was in no way NBA ready. If you can't shoot the ball at 40% in college, then you aren't going to be able to score the ball at the professional level. But to give him the benefit of the doubt, playing in the NBA at a lower usage role with actual offensive weapons might be better suited for him, since at Arizona he was clearly asked to do far too much. Even hitting the transfer portal didn't look like a bad move at that moment, but instead he opted to declare for the draft and went 48th overall to the Golden State Warriors. Golden State is a place that a lot of young guards should want to go, but between the time split in the G League and the NBA, his time didn't last very long. In limited minutes, he averaged about 4 points and 2 assists per game, and he looked overwhelmed pretty much the entire time. But to be honest, everyone should have kind of expected that. He could barely keep up his game at a decent level at the college level, so it should come at no surprise that he wasn't able to keep up with the length, the physicality, and the speed of the NBA game. So after just 1 season, Mannion decided to go overseas. It even took him a little while to get up to speed there before averaging 20 a game in the Series A Italian League in the 2024 season. To be fair, he took himself out of the league, and so it wouldn't come as a surprise if he tries to make a comeback, but if he were a bit savvier about his path and had stayed a couple more years in college, there's a pretty good chance that he could have been making an impact on an NBA team today. Even if you're just a casual college basketball fan, you still probably know a little bit about who Carson Edwards is. Matt Painter has been characterized with star big men in years and years of success, and Carson Edwards has been one of his biggest success stories to date. His junior season saw him average a wild 24 points per game to lead the Boilermakers to 14th in the final AP polling. He scored 42 in the tourney not just once, but twice, and was just 1 overtime away from single-handedly getting them into the Final Four. He looked like a Fred VanVleet kind of guy, and some even said along the lines of a less efficient Stephen Curry. He could create space and separation for himself while shooting at his extremely deep range, smashing Purdue's single-season 3-point record, and lining himself up for the league before getting drafted 33rd overall. At first, it looked like the Celtics had pulled off a steal, from dropping 30 on 9 3-balls in a preseason game to averaging a summer league team high at 19.4 points per game. Edwards was looking to be one of the next best 3-point specialists, and had the speed to pair with it to get away with playing at his 5'11" frame. Boston fans were going kind of crazy about Carson, for a good reason. He was exciting as hell, man. They thought he was going to be their next undersized savior, but as it normally goes after the summer league, they were brought back to reality, and Carson certainly got a little humbled. He spent the little time that he did have as a rookie coming off the bench in late game and blowout scenarios, while averaging upwards of 20 points per game in the G League. And had he have played a little better when he did get his time on the floor, he probably would have seen the courts a little bit more. Shooting just 33% for the field just doesn't cut it at that level, especially when you're fighting for a roster spot like he was. And another problem was he didn't really have a backup plan if his jumper wasn't going in. He wasn't necessarily a great playmaker, and was even listed as a 5'11" shooting guard with the Celtics because of it. He wasn't the best player off the ball, and probably excelled at Purdue because he thrived being a demon with the ball in his hands. There were also just too many guards in that team for him to get a fair shot in the first place. Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, and Jaylen Brown, just to name a few. They had 4 rookie guards on that team as well. By year 2, he had already gotten buried, and by the end of that season, his time in the league was pretty close to done. He was able to sign a 2-year deal with Detroit near the end of the next season, but would get his team option declined less than 3 months in, which was officially the end of it. He had played in 72 games over the next 3 seasons, while shooting less than 30% from 3. He was a very hot player at times, but he was very inconsistent. But when he hit his slumps, he was just a 5'11" dude that's not great at hitting his roll men or kicking out to shooters, while also chucking up an assload of bricks. I'm sure you can get the picture of how ugly this got. He had the college superstar NBA bust build. Dominance and bright lights with the ball in his hands was what he was used to, and he couldn't conform to an NBA role. It really just wasn't built to last. Now imagine working your whole life to get to the college level, then to make the league as an undrafted player, to finally putting together a career longer than a decade as one of the better role players in the NBA. All to be known as Steph's little brother. While that hasn't been Seth Curry's entire existence, it's certainly been a major piece to his story. And let's get things clear, Seth isn't bad at all, nor did he fail in the NBA. But the difference between two brothers with similar frames and 99% the exact same genetics is a pretty fascinating case study regardless. He didn't get to the league off straight nepotism, nor is it any other reason he's still in it. He's carved out a legit role that's unique to him and has been very, very good at it. It's just tough to walk in the shadow of your older brother when that's Steph Curry. He finished high school by averaging 22 a game off 52% shooting. And after going to play for Liberty initially, he went crazy there, warranting a transfer to Duke. He was an extremely efficient shooter there, and was named to the All-American second team. But due to a shin surgery barring him from completing interviews and his lack of both defense and athleticism, he wasn't chosen come draft time. He would spend some time in the G League with the Warriors affiliate before getting passed around until he found a home in Sacramento, where he etched out a little name for himself by shooting 45% from 3 and scoring about 7 points a game. Over the next few years, we would start to see more and more floor time. Still, he was getting passed around, but not because he could barely get by on an NBA roster, but because teams saw real value in him. I mean, with the Curry name, they saw him as an elite shooting prospect and realized that this guy actually was a fantastic shooter. But now he's become one of the best in the league, even leading the league in three-point percentage this past season. If you really think about it, he was never a failed version of his brother, because he was never really supposed to be as good as him. He has definitely picked up his shooting, but as pretty much everyone else on this list goes, he doesn't capture the special parts about Steph. When it comes to putting the ball on the floor or finding his teammates, Seth doesn't have that extra oomph that Steph has to make him dangerous in every regard. But as a pretty small guard who isn't super high usage, not ball dominant, and not a great defender, it is interesting to see what made him special compared to guys like Burke and Jimmer. In the NBA, if you're not going to take over scoring 25 points a game efficiently, you better be damn good at doing what your team needs you to do, or you're out of there, dude. In the case of Seth Curry, whether there's 12 shots a night his team needs or 2 shots a night, this guy is someone you can consistently rely on to knock down what's there, or to play without crapping his pants and turning the ball over, while still buying into the team's defensive system. In terms of talent, Steph is truly miles and miles ahead of his brother, but at the same time, Seth is a real testament to how far a little basketball IQ and hard work can take you. At this point, these kinds of players just sound repetitive, but the same was the case with Max Abmas. He turned into an overnight sensation with Oral Roberts when he turned into one of the most prolific college basketball scorers the sport has ever seen. He's one of just 12 collegiate players with over 3,000 points, and even when he went to play for Texas, his scoring punch was just as explosive. Comps came in fast after he took Oral Roberts to the Sweet 16 as a sophomore. They called him Midcourt Max for his ability to shoot the rock from deep distances, and take a wild guess who this guy started getting compared to. He originally declared for the draft in 2021 before going back to college at the deadline, and then finally transferring as a fifth-year player to Texas. Over his 5 years, he shot 38% from 3 while shooting 8.5 3 balls a game, and by the end of his career, he had hit a total of 512. The hype had most definitely worn off by the time the draft process came around, especially since he was already 23 years old while standing at less than 6 feet tall barefoot. He went undrafted, but didn't get any real hype surrounding the fact. He would get a contract to play with the Utah Jazz in the Summer League, but there wasn't really any buzz around that either. He'd get a contract, but that contract didn't even last a full month, and so he was stuck playing in the G League for a full year. His game there was nearly identical to how it was in his college days. He chucked up 7 threes a game in 25 minutes and on 38% shooting. Max will always be a legend in college hoops circles, a March Madness hero, but on the professional level, he may just stay in the G League and international scenes for the rest of his career. It's not necessarily that he's bad, but as it normally goes with these guys, he's a very one-dimensional player. He hasn't struggled because he can't shoot, he's struggled because that's kinda all he can do. He looks pretty identical to his 20-year-old self at Oral Roberts. He's got a quick trigger, an elite jumper, but an extremely small frame, only really being able to serve as a professional spark plug when in the NBA, you can find the same thing that's less of a defensive liability. It took a couple of years for some of these guys to bring up disappointment, but for Sharife Cooper, it was immediate, and it made him disappear in an instant. Heading into college, Sharife had it all. He came with the swag, the speed, and the creative tools that seemed just natural to him. But what he didn't have was a polished, matured game. But let's rewind to Auburn. There he was able to only play in 12 games due to an investigation, but in those 12 games he averaged 20 points and 8 assists, and looked like a real leader with the ball in his hands. But the NBA scouts weren't sold. Well, for starters, there was that shot that had him shooting at 23% from 3 and 39% from the field while shooting 15 shots per game. The mechanics looked pretty nice, but the results didn't look as good. But even more of a killer was that he was tiny. He was listed at a generous 6'1" and had a very wiry frame, no wingspan, and virtually zero vertical athleticism. And it was just clear that he would get eaten up. Even though some people had him high on their draft boards simply because of the potential, there was also a lot of potential for him to turn out shitty, and that was just as scary. And so he slid all the way down to number 48 in the 2021 draft. Atlanta took a chance on him, which made sense because Trey Young may just be the best player comp for a scrawny guy who likes to swing the rock or chuck up shots. He played 22 games in the G League while riding the bench and eventually getting into 12 games for the Hawks, before playing with their Summer League team only to get waived 3 days after signing another two-way. He would flirt with Cleveland for a couple years, signing two-ways and 10-day contracts, but after failing to find his way back to the league, he did what all players like him do, just going overseas. He wasn't Trey Young or Steph Curry lights, he never should have been marketed as that whatsoever, but people still had high hopes for what could have been. He's been bouncing around as a 15-point per game scorer in France, Greece, and Turkey, but if that's all he's going to do, then it's probably not getting back to the league. But why'd someone like Sharife fail so hard? The thing with all these guys, especially Sharife, is that people like the idea of players like Steph, but they sometimes don't take into account the reality and brutality of the league. It's a business at the end of the day, and these players are tossed out like nothing if they can't perform at an extremely high level very quickly. It seems like everyone who comes up is compared to Steph, KD, or LeBron, but the reality is, no one is going to live up to those expectations, because by the time they carve out a place for themselves, if they even do, then they'll be the ones that people look at and compare players to. It's a cycle. And guys like Sharife, or Jimmer, or Trey Burke just got caught up in it. Thank you for watching if you made it this far, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and as always, I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out.